couple sits in a bathtub together, steam rising as the woman gently tells the man to wait because she still needs to prepare dinner, but he smiles and kisses her, saying it's fine. What started as a contract slowly became something else, though neither of them is quite sure when that change began. A few months ago. A woman walks past a man and another woman, catching the man's attention. He comments on how slim the passerby looks, saying her waist seems like it could snap. He wonders aloud if he should try asking for her number, which earns him an annoyed curse from the woman with him. Somewhere else, the same lady sitting in the car with her mother, looking unsure. She tells her mother the outfit looks too revealing, but her mom brushes it off, asking if she'd rather wear that old, worn-out thing again. Her mother insists that everyone wears things like this these days and there's no point fussing about it. Then her mother hands her a formal invitation, telling her not to lose it, warning her about the effort it took to get it in the first place. She reminds her daughter to do well at the event for her father's sake. The woman quietly agrees. Her father is the founder of Hanseong Distribution, a company he started over 40 years ago as a small shipping and transportation business. Over the decades, it grew steadily to become one of the top 2 companies in the domestic distribution industry. He poured his life into the company, and she always believed it would only grow brighter in the future. But after he collapsed, her stepbrother took over, and things started to fall apart. The new leadership pushed reckless expansion, which caused financial strain. Continuous deficits piled up. Stock prices fell. Companies that hadn't been paid for construction work sent demand letters. Investors started pulling out one by one. When the funding reached a critical point, it felt like everything could collapse. She refuses to let her father's hard work disappear like this, not while he's still in a hospital bed with his eyes closed. She decides she has to find a marriage partner, not for love, but to save the company her father built with his hands. A lady walks into the room and asks where Roha is. The man says he thought she went out with her. The lady reminds him that Roha said she had a meeting today with the JL Group CEO's grandson, and she dropped her off there. The man asks if it's JL, so do Junhan. He reminds the lady that he warned her not to be greedy. The man is Ki Won-hyuk, stepbrother of Ki Roha, the current CEO of Hanseong Distribution. He says everyone knows Junhan is a cold man with no interest in women, so he doesn't know what Roha is doing there, and he isn't expecting much from it. The lady says Roha is pretty, so it's worth trying. Won-hyuk scoffs and says, as if. She reminds him he has work tomorrow, so he should stop drinking and get some sleep. She then asks if he has the contact info of Beom-sok, the youngest son of Chairman Oh. Won-hyuk asks if she means the spoiled kid and says he doesn't know, then asks why. She says when he saw Roha's photo before, he looked like he liked her, and even if he's not JL, Ugang Group is still a solid option. Won-hyuk asks if she's really trying to introduce Roha to Beom-sok. He doesn't care if it's Ugang or anyone else. His stepsister just went to meet Junhan. She says not to get his hopes up, more options are better, and if he doesn't know, she'll find out on her own. Meanwhile, Roha sits quietly and thinks that she wasn't expecting a warm welcome, but they haven't even spoken for 10 minutes yet. She decides to take the lead. She asks Junhan how he's been. She says he might not remember, but she was his junior in college, Korea University, Business Administration Department. They even shared some classes. She asks if he remembers. Junhan looks at her and asks if she came all this way just to say that. He says he only agreed to meet her once out of courtesy to Chairman Ki, who's in the hospital. He asks if going to the same university and department makes her think she's his equal. If she plans to win a man over with such a low move, why bring up education? Then he asks if her father knows his daughter, who graduated from a top university, is going around dressed like that trying to throw herself at someone. Roha tells him not to speak so carelessly. He asks if she's trying to propose. Then he continues and says if she's embarrassed now, she should have tried something more clever than using her looks. She must think he's the kind of person to fall for such a trick. He tells her that marriage is a business deal. If she had at least written a report on the synergy between their families, maybe he would have considered it. Roha asks what he means. He says 28 minutes have passed. She has 2 minutes left, and starts counting down. Roha says if that's what it takes, she'll write a report. She says there are clear benefits to a partnership between JL and Hanseong Distribution. She brings up JL's problems with overseas distribution and says Hanseong can help with that. Once the funding issue is resolved, getting clients back will be easy. Junhan says she has no pride, then tells her to try it. Roha asks what he means. He says she should try what he came here for. If she can't do it, she should quit now. Then he asks if she's even desperate. Roha thinks to herself that she's more desperate than anyone else. She wonders what kind of feeling drove her to come here. She walks up to him and gives him a quick kiss. Junhan asks if she really thinks that counts as a kiss. She says she'll do it again. He suddenly grabs her and pushes her onto the table. Junhan stands up and says, now that it's done, she should leave, so Roha walks out. As she goes, she thinks to herself that she knew it. She knew he would be interested. Later that day, an old man sits in a quiet room and says every time he learns something new, it feels like there's no end to what he can learn. He says it's great that even at his age, he can still grow, and it turned out well. He asks how the dinner with Chairman Park went. The old man is Do Jin-myung, chairman of JL Group. Junhan says there wasn't anything to like or dislike. Jin-myung says he's blunt as always, but since she might be his life partner, he should like the person. Junhan says it doesn't matter, a business partner is enough. Jin-myung says if that's the case, they can meet a few more times. Besides KJ Financial, there are other good matches. He says his second daughter-in-law recommended the daughter of the CEO of Hanseong Distribution, one of the women in the photos. Junhan says it seems like she's trying to push that match onto him. Jin-myung says even so, it's not a bad choice if he lowers his standards a bit. He adds that Ki So-jung, the CEO of Hanseong Distribution, is a good businessman, so his daughter was likely raised well. The compatibility between the companies is also good. The only question is whether his management style will be a gain or a loss. He tells Secretary Jang to gather more information about the women in the photos and to arrange a time for blind dates. Junhan says he has another appointment and leaves. Jin-myung says he'll contact him again once the date is set. In the car, manager Kim asks Junhan if he'll be going to the party hosted by Oh Beom-seok. Junhan asks about the matter, and Kim says the item will be exhibited at the auction held at the party tonight at 8 p.m. Junhan says then they should go. As they drive, he remembers his moment with Roha. Junhan walks into the hall. Prosody %. A man nudges another and says that's Do Junhan. A woman nearby says he looks even better in person, like someone who could be in movies. One of the men asks what Junhan is doing here, since he never seems to lack attention. The other replies and says he probably came for that item. He adds that it has to do with Junhan's mother. Junhan sees someone across the room and wonders if that's Ki Roha from Hanseong Distribution. A man walks up to Roha and says she looks even better than in the photo. He introduces himself as Oh Beom-seok, director of Ugang Industrial, the one who hosted the party. He says he heard her father cherishes her, and jokes that if she hadn't been hidden away, all the guys would have chased after her. He says he just received a nice bottle of vintage wine and asks if she wants to have a drink with him. Roha simply says hello. He asks if she's coming or not, and when she stays silent, he asks if she doesn't like wine. He says there's a hotel nearby with a great view and that she can think about it there. Just then, Roha sees Junhan. Oh Beom-seok also sees him and asks why he's here. Oh Beom-seok tells him he should at least greet people because it's awkward, and asks if he came just for that. He adds that the item will be up for auction later so he can take it if he wants. Some men call Beom-seok, and he says he'll be right there. Roha tells him she's going to the bathroom for a moment, and he says okay. She walks into the bathroom and hears two women talking. One of them says Do Junhan is such a flirt, he's tall and handsome, and the other one says she's going to get him today. The first woman asks if she's really okay, why she's acting like she wants to be the madam. The second says it would be great if she could, and admits she tried flirting a little today, and asks if it was okay. Roha listens silently and thinks it's ridiculous. She wonders what Junhan is thinking dealing with a woman who's clearly obsessed with money and flirts with whoever she wants. She decides it's not a misunderstanding, the woman's doing it for money and it's pathetic. As Roha walks downstairs, she hears Junhan on the phone telling someone to go ahead with the matter he mentioned earlier, that JL will cover the funds. She keeps walking quietly, but Junhan suddenly speaks, asking if her hobby is flirting with every man she meets. He asks why she's pretending to be surprised, since she knows he's there. She tells him to think whatever he wants. He says he doesn't care who she flirts with, but she should at least know who the person is before going after them. He tells her not to ruin her life, no matter how desperate she is. Even people in bad situations know not to eat something spoiled. She asks why it matters to him whether she lives or dies, says she doesn't have many choices and can't afford to be picky. He says if she's saying that, it means she doesn't care who it is as long as she gets something. He warns her the man she's messing with will never let her go once he has her. He'll tear her apart like a hunting dog and laugh while doing it. He asks if she really thinks someone will marry her without getting anything in return, and says if she doesn't understand even after this warning, then she's not okay. She replies that it's the same for him. He's not marrying without getting anything either. Oh, Beom-seok walks up and jokes that he thought she died in the bathroom, then asks why she's with Junhan. He asks Junhan if he likes her and threatens to destroy him if he does. Roha quickly says no, he didn't say anything, and tells Beom-seok they should go. An announcement plays saying the auction is about to begin and everyone should move to the main hall. Beom-seok tells Roha he'll be back soon. He has something urgent to do, and adds that they should have fun later at the Sunrise Hotel suite out front. Roha remembers what Junhan told her earlier. The auctioneer shows the next piece and says the auction will now begin. He presents a painting more famous overseas than in Korea, called Picnic on the Grass by Lee Yeon-jin. Roha stares at it. Flashback. Her mom shows her the painting and says she got it with great difficulty. It's by her favorite artist and asks if Roha thinks it's pretty. Roha replies that it's so pretty it warms her heart just looking at it. Her mom laughs and says she really knows how to appreciate art and asks if she wants to become an artist. Roha says if she becomes one, she'll draw her mom first. Her mom says she'll support whatever Roha wants to do. Later, her stepmother sees the painting and asks Roha why she hung something by an unknown artist, says it's embarrassing if guests come over. End of flashback. Her stepmother ended up throwing it away without saying anything. Roha never expected to see it again. The auctioneer says the starting price is 8 billion won. Roha thinks to herself that she has no cash, everything's with her stepmother, but if she sells stocks, she can get about 8 billion. If there's a bidding war, she might be able to stretch to 9 billion. Suddenly, Junhan raises the bid to 20 billion. The auctioneer asks if anyone else wants to bid. Roha is stunned. The auctioneer says Lee Yeon-jin's Picnic on the Grass is sold. Roha asks Junhan to wait a minute because she has something important to say, and Beom-seok also asks the man to excuse him. Roha tells Junhan she needs a moment, and he tells her to get in the car so they can talk elsewhere. Beom-seok grabs Roha's hand and reminds her they were supposed to be together today. He brings up how she used to follow him around for his attention, and now she's going to follow Junhan, asking who said she could. Roha tells him to let go, but before she can pull her hand away, Junhan tells Beom-seok to let go of her. Beom-seok glares and accuses him of being shameless, saying it's wrong to steal someone else's woman. Junhan looks confused, and Beom-seok says yes, Roha's going to be his brother's wife, and he's taking her. Beom-seok asks Roha if that's why she's clinging to Junhan. Isn't that right? Junhan asks if he's serious and says Beom-seok should be the one catching the hint. His family already proposed first, but he hasn't accepted anything yet. Junhan tells Roha to get in the car, and she nods and climbs in. They drive away. In the car, Junhan asks Roha what she wanted to say. She tells him she wants to buy the painting Picnic on the Grass. He asks why he should sell it. Roha explains it belonged to her late mother and means a lot to her. She asks if it's rude to request it. She says its value isn't about money, it holds her mother's memories. Manager Kim announces they've arrived. Junhan asks if they can have a moment alone, and Kim says he'll wait upstairs. Junhan asks Roha how she plans to pay for the painting since she doesn't have the money. Roha apologizes and admits she doesn't have it yet, but she'll get it somehow. She offers to pay auction price or even add 100 million more if he can wait. Junhan cuts her off and asks if she's offering that much because she's about to marry Beom-sok and ruin herself. Roha thanks him for the concern but says she'll choose her own partner. Junhan shrugs and says fine, but he doesn't do credit. Roha offers to write an IOU or give a guarantee. Junhan tells her to forget that and instead offers his own condition. For the next 3 months, she'll be his partner. Roha is shocked and asks if he's serious. He asks if she needs time to think. Roha thinks she doesn't want to be treated cheaply by him and politely declines. She thanks him for today and apologizes about the painting, then says she won't be his partner and leaves the car. Junhan watches her go and then tells manager Kim to look into Hansong distribution. Kim hands the male lead the data on Hansong distribution. Junhan asks for his opinion, and Kim confirms if he's asking about Hansong. The male lead says yes. And Kim explains that Hansong holds a solid place among domestic logistics firms, but despite good credibility and recent buyer conflicts, the real concern is CEO Ki Won-hyuk, who has a bad reputation and a rough personality, making investors avoid him. Junhan nods, and Kim adds that besides the CEO, the company itself is decent, and even the chairman thinks highly of it. The male lead says that helps, and Kim tells him they've arrived. Roha's stepmother compliments the food, saying it's light and elegant, almost artistic, and mentions the museum will be handed to Roha after marriage. Beom-sok says that depends on how things go, complaining that Roha is acting stiff even though she's being offered marriage, and hints at her getting in strange men's cars, saying marriage should be built on trust. Her stepmom asks Roha why she did that. Beom-sok says she doesn't seem to like him and questions if people marry for love or money. Her stepmom says Roha is shy and had many admirers but high standards, and says it's rare to find someone like her now, better than a messy past. Beom-sok agrees, and the stepmom says women rely on men too, asking how Beom-sok doesn't get that by now. She tells him to be patient with Roha and mentions the museum again. Roha heads to the bathroom and her stepmom follows, scolding her for sitting there all stiff and making Director O uncomfortable. She says at least he seems interested, and though rough, he's handsome and dependable. Marrying him could help with the company's troubles. And cleaning up after Roha isn't easy. Roha says she doesn't want the marriage. Her stepmom is shocked and asks how she could say that, reminding her they don't have the luxury to be picky. And since she couldn't secure Do Junhan, she should be thankful for this chance. She says, everyone adjusts to marriage and Roha needs to stop being naive. She adds that Roha is meeting Director O at the lounge tonight and tells her not to act cold like before, assuming she won't be coming home. At the bar, one guy calls out to Junhan saying it's been months and hard to see him, joking that if he missed this, he'd be blacklisted by the alumni. He asks if Junhan has been that busy and mentions hearing he's been on matchmaking dates. Junhan says work's been hectic. Another guy asks if he's met anyone, and one jokes that with Junhan's sky-high standards, it's unlikely. He says based on looks, only Ki Roha from Hanseong or Park Ga-young from Moonjong would make sense. But if he had to pick, it'd be Roha because of her composed attitude. Someone else says he doesn't even know them and can't pick. But the guy says he saw Ki Roha earlier with Oh Beom-sok. Junhan asks who she was with, and the guy confirms it was Roha and Beom-sok, saying he's not sure which room, but she was with his group. It didn't look great, and he wonders if Beom-sok might cause problems. Someone says if both of them are involved, Hansong must be desperate, questioning how Roha ended up like that. Just then, someone notices Junhan getting up and asks where he's going. But Junhan doesn't respond. He walks to an older man and asks if he knows which room Director Oh Beom-sok from Ugang Materials is in. Everyone cheers for Beom-sok's marriage, but he jokes and asks what's there to celebrate, says it feels like he's finished now, and warns them not to ghost him just because he's getting married or he'll come after them. One friend laughs and says they can't lose their sponsor. Another friend jokes about Roha marrying someone like him, says it doesn't match her vibe, especially not with someone like Oh Beom-seok. Prosody, Beom-seok tells him he's no better. They're all the same, and the friend agrees. Beom-seok notices Roha is quiet and asks why she's acting so reserved. She says she doesn't drink. He insists she should have one, says one drink won't hurt, but she says she's not feeling well. He frowns and tells her not to act like that and embarrass him, hands her a drink and says if she refuses it, she might as well forget the marriage and everything else. He tells her to take it while he's asking nicely. Roha says she'll drink it, but he tells her no, he'll feed it to her himself. She tells him to wait and pushes him back. One of his friends tells him to calm down or he's going to smother her before the wedding. Another says he's losing control and asks why he's bothering her. Beom-seok asks what he's done wrong, and a friend says Roha even flinched while drinking. Just then, a hotel waiter enters and apologizes for interrupting, says there have been complaints about cigarette smoke from their room. He reminds them the hotel is a non-smoking place and politely asks them to use the designated areas outside. One of the men scoffs, says the waiter must be new, and asks if he knows who they are. He points to the ashtray and tells the waiter to call Manager Park if there's an issue. The waiter says there's no need and politely tells them to enjoy their time, then leaves. One of the friends mutters that JL Hotel is hopeless and criticizes how they train staff. Another mentions seeing Do Junhan earlier. Someone reacts with surprise, says Junhan was in charge of the hotel's management, but the friend explains he probably just stopped by for a gathering. He says if Junhan is at a gathering, there might be some decent people there and jokes about joining them. Beom-seok turns to Roha and asks if she's excited because Junhan is around. He asks if she's feeling bad about marrying him, brings up the day she clung to him and then ran after Junhan, and asks if she regrets it. Roha tells him to stop talking like that and says nothing happened. He smirks and says she's feisty, says it's charming. One of the friends tells him to cool it and jokes for them to get a room. Beom-seok says she should forget Junhan and have fun with him instead. Roha tells him to stop. He glares and asks if she's crazy. She stares at him and asks what he just said. He tells her just because she's a little pretty, she thinks she can walk all over him. A friend tells him to stop because she looks like she's about to cry, but Beom-seok tells him to stay out of it. Roha says, "Don't do it," but he keeps going. Another friend says Beom-seok completely lost it and still has a long way to go before becoming human. Beom-seok tells everyone to get over it and turns to Roha again, asks if she still won't marry him when Hansong is in trouble and she's acting like this. Roha yells at him to stop and slaps him. Just as he's about to retaliate, someone speaks up and says that's enough. Roha looks up and sees Junhan standing there. One of Beom-seok's friends says he has nothing to do with this and tries to slip away, while the other one tells Beom-seok to handle it properly and keep things quiet. Junhan asks the manager if he can prepare a room for the lady, and the manager nods, saying he'll guide her. Beom-seok looks at Roha and tells her to try leaving, but she glares at him and says not to order her around, then starts walking away. He demands to know where she's going, acting like she can just leave her fiancé behind. She looks confused and he reminds her that the one marrying her is him, not Do Junhan. He says he's had enough, asks if she thinks he's someone she can play with, and complains that she listens to everything Junhan says but ignores him completely. He shouts and asks if he should flip everything over. Junhan steps closer and calmly tells him to stop, while he's still being polite, reminding him that the hotel belongs to his family. Beom-seok doesn't back down and asks what that's supposed to mean. Junhan calls the manager and tells him to escort the lady out, and she starts walking away without looking back. Beom-seok yells after her, asking where she thinks she's going. Then he turns to Junhan, grabs his collar, and asks if he really wants to pick a fight. Junhan says there's no way he'll let someone act like this in their hotel. Beom-seok laughs and asks what he's even talking about, says it's his woman and he can do what he wants. Without warning, Junhan punches him and tells him their engagement isn't over yet, so who decided she's his woman, and even if she were, That doesn't give him the right to treat her like that. Junhan asks who raised him to act this way. Beom-seok growls and asks who he thinks he is to lecture him. Junhyun gets ready to punch him again, but the manager steps in, saying the lady has been escorted safely and things are getting loud outside, so maybe it's best to stop. Junhyun glares at Beom-seok and warns him not to go near Roha again, says she's not someone he can treat however he wants, then turns and leaves. Later, Junhyun tells Roha to stay at the hotel tonight, says he's already sent her clothes for laundry and they'll be delivered before checkout tomorrow. She thanks him for the thought, but says she'll leave once her clothes are dry. She asks why he's not saying anything. Junhyun stares at her and asks if she's seriously still thinking of marrying Beom-seok after everything he said. He says if that's what she wants, then she deserves what's coming. Roha says he probably has a lot to say and she appreciates all the help he's given her, but she doesn't want to show him this side of her anymore. She says in the end, whether it's her stepmother, Beom-seok, or even him, they all feel the same to her. She thanks him again and admits it was her mistake to even try going through with a marriage that was never going to work. Junhyun says instead of someone like Beom-seok, she should just marry him. Roha stops and asks what he just said. Junhyun looks at her and quickly adds that there's a condition. Roha asks what condition he means, and Junhyun says, as she already knows, this marriage is strictly business. Once they both get what they want, there's no reason to stay married. The term is 3 years. After their company's alliance settles, they'll divorce. She asks if he wants anything else in their married life, and he says there's no need to act like a real couple unless it's for appearances. He won't interfere in her private life, but having an affair is not allowed. If any scandal happens and damages his reputation or the chairman's, she should be ready to pay heavily. She asks if he'll also stay away from other women while living with her, and he says that should be obvious. Roha thinks to herself that 3 years isn't short, but it's still better than Beom-seok. It's better to marry someone cold like Junhan. Ever since her father collapsed and the company started struggling, she never expected her marriage to be normal anyway. She agrees to the marriage of convenience, but asks him to keep the divorce agreement a secret from his family. Junhyun says that's fine. He adds that they'll discuss investment details on Monday and officially inform Oh Beom-seok of the breakup. He tells her never to see that man again. She asks why he suddenly changed his mind when he hadn't planned on marrying her. He repeats that it's business. He simply judged that Hansong distributions would be useful for them. He asks if she thinks there's some other reason, and she says no. She expected this. He says there's no room in this relationship for words like love or affection, and she says she knows. Roha walks down the road talking to her stepmother on the phone. Her stepmother asks if it's true, if she's really doing this just to avoid marrying Oh Beom-seok. She says she doesn't understand why Roha pushed herself onto him for so long if she didn't want him. Roha says it's not a lie and tells her not to worry. She thinks they should formally inform Ugang Corporation about the broken engagement. Her stepmother says Roha still doesn't understand how the world works. Marriage is unpredictable, even at the altar. She finally agrees and says they need to arrange a meeting with Director Junhan. Then she changes her mind and says they should just go ahead and set a date for the formal meeting. She says they can't be sure what Junhan might pull later. On the day of the formal meeting, it rains heavily. The driver says they've arrived. Roha's stepmother says it'll be annoying if her clothes get stained. Won-huk says it's monsoon season. Of course it rains. He asks why she wore white today. If she overdoes it, she might end up looking worse. She says she reserved this outfit a month ago just for today. Du Sajang's wife is known to be fashionable, and she can't fall behind. Won-hyuk says he expected that from her. He holds his hands out to Roha, but she ignores him. He asks why she isn't taking his hand, and she finally does. Her stepmother tells her to hurry, and Roha says she's coming. At the table, CEO Do Kyung-hoon of JL Shopping thanks them for valuing his son. He asks if it's okay to hold the ceremony in mid-August. His wife says there's no reason to drag it out. The longer they wait, the noisier it'll get. She asks Roha's stepmother what she thinks, and she agrees. If the couple is happy, the sooner the better. His wife asks if Junhan has plans in August, and he says yes. He has a meeting with the New York branch manager in late August. He'll attend after the wedding, using it as a honeymoon. He says it'll take 5 days. His mother says a business trip for a honeymoon sounds disappointing and asks how he could do that. Junhan says he arranged the schedule as best as he could. September is full of projects like new branding and the Cheongdam store opening. His mother says she understands he's busy, but it's still upsetting. Roha says it's all right. She hasn't been to New York in a while and thinks it'll be nice. Kyung-hoon apologizes on behalf of his son and says Junhan is always indifferent to these things. Roha says the destination doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts. His mother says fine and asks what would be a good wedding gift. She says she heard diamond prices dropped recently. On the way out, Roha's stepmother asks Mrs. Du if her outfit is from Chanel's spring-summer collection. Mrs. Du says she has a good eye, but the piece is from their private line. Kyung-hoon tells Won-hyuk that running a company must be hard and says he's worked hard. Won-hyuk says she can speak comfortably now since they're family. Roha asks Junhan if he can make time tonight. He asks why, and she says there's somewhere she wants him to go with her. Roha and Junhan visit her father in the hospital. He's lying in bed with an oxygen mask on. Roha gently tells him she brought the man she's going to marry and introduces Junhan. She says he knows him. He once told her he'd like him as a son-in-law. Junhan says it's been a while. He's not sure if Roha's father can hear him, but he's truly sorry to greet him in a hospital room over something so important. Their decision to marry, made on their own, still weighs on him. Roha tells her father to recover soon so he can attend the wedding. She says he wouldn't let his only daughter walk down the aisle alone. Junhan quietly asks if there's been no change at all. Roha says no, not yet. They've tried everything, specialists overseas, advanced treatments, even traditional medicine, but nothing has helped. It's been 10 months since he collapsed. Sometimes she's afraid he'll never wake up. She thanks Junhan for making time tonight, knowing he must be busy. He tells her that starting tomorrow, she should move into his studio apartment. He's already prepared a room for her and asks if she has any questions. She says she doesn't and says she'll see him at the ceremony. She's packing her clothes when Won-hyuk comes in and asks if that's all she's taking, wondering if she plans to just keep changing outfits. She tells him most of her things are already there. She's just taking a few. If she needs more, she'll buy them. She tells him to stop drinking, reminding him he's the company's representative now, the face of the business. More importantly, it's bad for his heart. Does he want to collapse like their father? He tells her to stop nagging and asks if she really likes Junhan that much. She asks what he's trying to say and reminds him this isn't a marriage for love. He says at the formal meeting she couldn't take her eyes off Junhan. He asks if Junhan planned marriage with divorce in mind, says he looks like the type. He tries to remember the name for that kind of marriage. Right, a contract marriage. But since it's business-related, it's strategic, isn't it? Roha says it's not like that and tells him to focus on running the company. She says if, by chance, she and Junhan end up divorcing, he cuts her off and says she should come to him. It'd be nice for two people who've both been married to understand each other. She sighs and tells him not to joke about things like that. They're siblings. She'd rather argue than hear something like that. He says they don't share a drop of blood. Isn't that true? She tells him to stop. He's seriously starting to annoy her, and there's a limit to how much of his drunk talk she'll take. He says it was a joke, asks why she's being so serious. Just because she's getting married doesn't mean she has to cut him off. They're still family. On the wedding day, some ladies are talking. One of them says she still can't believe Roha is getting married before her. It doesn't feel real. Another agrees, saying at first she thought it was just a joke. Right then, the first lady spots Roha. Do Jin-myung walks into the hall, spots Junhan, and congratulates him on the wedding, saying now he can finally relax. Junhan thanks him and calls him chairman, but his grandfather raises an eyebrow and asks what's with the formality. Junhan quickly corrects himself and thanks him again, this time calling him grandfather. Jin-myung says that's better, then turns to Secretary Zhang and asks how things went. Secretary Zhang replies that the documents are ready. Jin Myung looks at Junhan and tells him it's nothing major. He's just transferring 8.6% of JL Holdings shares to him. Junhan looks shocked and says it's too much, but his grandfather says too much? He has high hopes for him, and this is just his way of encouraging him to do better. Junhan thanks him sincerely, and Jin Myung smiles, asking when his grandson grew up so much before congratulating him again. Secretary Zhang quietly approaches and informs Jin Myung that President Kim from Daehyun wants a short meeting. Jin Myung nods and says okay, then tells Junhan they'll talk again later. As Jin Myung walks off, a man walks up to Junhan and asks how it feels to be favored by grandfather and step all over his cousin. It's director Do Byung-yoon from JL Energy. Junhan smiles and says he's here, and by the way, the champagne he prepared seems to match Byung-yoon's taste. He hands him a glass. Byung-yoon points out he already has one, but Junhan insists it's to encourage him to try harder and tells him not to refuse it. Byung-yoon mutters that Junhan is as annoying as ever, just like the old days. Meanwhile, Roha is in a room with her friends. One of them is taking pictures and tells her to smile, jokingly asking if someone died or something. Roha blinks, says she didn't realize she looked so stiff, and gives a smile. The wedding goes by in a flash. Everything feels unreal, maybe because of the crowd, maybe because she already knows how this marriage will end. As soon as the ceremony ends, they board a plane to New York, where Junhan has a business trip. Time passes, night falls, and before she knows it, dawn comes. They've arrived. Manager Jiam greets them, thanks Roha for coming, and congratulates her on the wedding. Junhan tells Jiam that Mr. Henson will be chairing the meeting and asks if he can attend. Jiam says yes. Junhan asks how the opening preparations are going, and Jiam reports that everything is on track. Entry procedures are done, and they're in the final stages of inspection. The only thing left is the on-site check. Then he adds there's a meeting request from the host of the upcoming home shopping event. Junhan asks who it is. Jiam says it's Park Ga-young. Roha freezes. Park Ga-young is her senior from university and Junhan's ex-girlfriend. Jiam continues and says Ga-young suggested a dinner to celebrate the wedding with the new couple. Junhan turns to Roha and asks if her schedule is free. She says yes. He tells Jiam to arrange it for tomorrow. Jiam nods. Later, Roha sits in the bathtub exhausted. She sighs to herself, thinking how strange it is to run into Ga-young here. Isn't it awkward for Junhan to meet his ex? But then she shakes her head. Why does she care? It's a contract marriage, just 3 years and they'll divorce. She won't ask for alimony. She wants the paintings. That's why she's nervous. It's all for the art. After a while, Junhan knocks on the bathroom door and walks in. Roha suddenly wakes up and sees him there. She asks what he's doing barging in. He says he knocked, but she didn't hear it. She wasn't coming out, so he got worried something had happened. She asks him how long he's been there and tells him to leave because she needs to get out too. He says she must be going for a physical approach now, like it's part of some plan. She tells him he was the one who came in first. She just forgot to lock the door and fell asleep. And she's tired of him acting like she's trying to force something. She says that's not her intention at all. She already achieved her goal and doesn't want extra trouble. He agrees that trouble is annoying, so they should avoid it, but he adds that she seems to be under a big misunderstanding. He says whether he holds her or not isn't his decision. She asks what that means and says it's his choice to refuse her, but questions if he really can. Manager Jiam talks about the store being on the 3rd floor where the women's fashion brands are, and says they pushed the opening earlier for the peak season, but everything is going smoothly. The male lead says that's good work. Jiam thanks him but mentions some designers are disagreeing about the display layout. While Jiam talks, Junhan suddenly drifts back in thought, thinking about what happened earlier with Roha in the bathroom. Jiam notices and asks if he's all right, suggests maybe they should delay things, but Junhan says they should go on. Jiam agrees and tells him they'll move to the site. They arrive and see a woman giving instructions. The woman sees Junhan and says she didn't expect to see him. She says she just came to check tomorrow's broadcast items and tells the manager to take care of the rest. Then she walks up to Junhan and says, "It's been years, and he looks even better now." She's show host Park Gae-young. She says she heard he got married and congratulates him, even if it's late, then jokes he should have invited her. He tells her there was no need. Why would she fly from Korea to New York for that? She laughs and says he's still cold. She says she heard he married the only daughter of Hansong Distribution and asks if it was just for business. He replies that whether it was or not, it doesn't really matter. She says she doesn't mean it like that. She just wondered who he'd choose and was jealous. She asks why not her? Why Roha? What's the difference? Then she says she understands if it's just for business. He asks what she's trying to say. She says it's nothing. He doesn't love anyone anyway. She reminds him about their dinner and asks if he remembered the plan. Then she offers to help the manager, but he says he's done. Junhan suddenly says he heard she got married too and suggests they all have dinner with her husband sometime since they're colleagues now. She tells him she didn't say, but she got divorced. Meanwhile, Roha stands in the rain, speaking to Jeom on the phone. He apologizes because the schedule went longer than expected and says he'll come pick her up. He's really sorry. She tells him not to worry, she'll just take a taxi. He says the director was supposed to come get her, but he ran into Park Gae-young at the store and they left ahead of her. She says she understands and hangs up. She thinks to herself that Gae-young hasn't changed. As Roha walks into the restaurant, she sees Junhan and Gae-young already there. Gae-young says she heard Roha is her junior, and now that she sees her, she recognizes her. She says Junhan didn't tell her anything, so she only found out when she got there. Roha greets her too. Gae-young asks if Roha still remembers her and says she feels bad now. She explains that she heard Junhan was supposed to pick Roha up. She had planned to come alone, but her home shopping work ran late, so she asked Junhan to go instead. She adds that if she had known things would turn out this way, she wouldn't have done that, and apologizes. Gae-young turns to Junhan and tells him that he left their junior awkwardly without saying anything. Then she turns back to Roha, says she's been rambling and keeping her standing too long, and tells her to sit down. Gae-young says the place might look a little shabby, but it was chosen as Restaurant of the Year by Agora, which is why she rented the whole place for dinner. Junhan comments that no wonder there's no one else there at this hour. Gae-young says since they're all gathered, they should raise a toast, and congratulates both of them. Roha thanks her, but Gae-young cuts her off and says, "May the alliance between their two families be successful." Roha thinks to herself that she didn't realize Gae-young was such a rude person and wonders if she's doing it on purpose. Junhan gets up to take a quick phone call and speaks with Mr. Henson. While he's away, Gae-young starts asking Roha about him. She says he must be difficult to deal with since he's blunt and doesn't care much about others' feelings. She adds that he's probably frustrating and Roha doesn't need to cling to him or endure a suffocating marriage like a fool. Roha asks what she means. Gae-young says it's not unusual for couples in arranged marriages to have their own lovers. Roha says she doesn't want to live like that, and even if it's arranged, there should be basic respect between partners. Gae-young asks if she really believes that. Roha says yes, and even Junhan agreed. They promised to stay committed. Gae-young asks if she actually believes him. Roha looks confused, so Gae-young says Roha is more naive than she thought, and asks if she really thinks someone like Junhan would be careless enough to have a scandal, especially when he's always so careful. Never. Roha asks what exactly she's trying to say. She says Gae-young decided it was an arranged marriage on her own and has been disrespectful since the start. Gae-young asks if she's wrong. Roha says she talks like she's some kind of secret lover. Gae-young replies that there's no reason for Junhan to reject her. They're physically compatible, at least. Roha thinks about flipping the table. But just then, Junhan comes back in and says he's heard enough. Gae-young comments that he seems busy and should hurry over before the food gets cold. She says she has something to tell him. She announces that she's thinking of accepting a scout offer from JL's higher-ups. Junhan asks why the sudden change. She says she received several offers and thought about them, but in the end, Enjoying her work is more important than money, so she's planning to return to Korea next month. Roha stands up and asks if after saying all that to her, she really plans to come back. Junhan asks what she means by that. Roha thinks that no matter what she says, Junhan will prioritize the company. He won't cancel hiring a skilled show host for something personal. Nothing will change if she speaks up, so she tells him to forget about it. Gayong says Roha must have misunderstood something and apologizes if that's the case. After dinner, Gayong asks Junhan if he's going straight back. He says yes. She says it's not important, but wants to discuss tomorrow's broadcast, and suggests they have another drink at the bar out front. Roha quickly says Junhan has a meeting tomorrow and then suddenly falls. Junhan rushes to her and picks her up. She tells him she's fine and it's nothing. He asks if she can move, then tells manager Jeom that he'll be there soon and to go ahead and rest. Roha asks what about him. He says he'll finish the conversation and return later. As he's about to go, Roha tells him not to go drinking with Gayong since they're on their honeymoon. He says it's just business and not what she's thinking, so she should go back and rest. He'll be back soon. She says she doesn't like it. She then asks if he and Gayong used to date. She says even if it's over for him, it doesn't seem to be for her. He says she must have forgotten this isn't a honeymoon, it's just a business trip. She's only tagging along, and he hates when personal feelings interfere with work. Right then, Gayong calls him and says manager Jeom is there, and she wants to know what he's doing at the hotel. Roha reminds him that they agreed not to cause any scandals. He says it's all strictly business and tells her to stop being stubborn. He's already informed manager Jeom, so she should get disinfected first. Gayong tells him it's fine, Roha isn't a child, and says goodbye to the female lead, adding they should meet again. The next day, Junhan talks on the phone. The caller says the item needs additional setup, and he asks about the cost. She says around 2,000, and though she considered paying out of pocket, the right procedures matter, and asks if they should meet. He says he'll connect her to the setup team leader, Manager Park, since he's busy. She says she already spoke with Manager Park, but he's not flexible at all, and tells him she's at Hallis right in front of the hotel, and it won't take long. He says fine, he'll come out. After that day, while staying in New York, Gayong starts calling Junhan out often. She never expected a romantic honeymoon, but she thought she could at least relax a little in New York. She was completely wrong. When she thinks about Junhan, she hopes the home shopping broadcast goes well, because his success is also her success. But she doesn't understand why it bothers her so much. It's just a marriage of convenience. Manager Jeom is in the car with Roha and says the roads seem really crowded today. She agrees and says she feels bad for dragging him around when he must be busy. He says the director insisted that he escort her home. She says the male lead must be especially busy today. Jeom says the director is already at the site and today's broadcast is very important. It could decide if the JL brand Across can succeed in the U.S. market. Roha asks if that's true and casually asks if the broadcast results could affect Gayong's recruitment. He asks why she wants to know, and she says she's just curious. He says Gayong's recruitment hasn't been finalized yet. She asks if that means it could be canceled depending on the results. He says yes, today's broadcast is like a test to determine if her contract will be confirmed. She says she understands. He adds that in his opinion, the odds aren't great since competing with established premium brands in the US is extremely tough, especially for a first-time broadcast. JL brand Across launches on home shopping. Gayong announces that the medium size has sold out. One of the staff members is shocked that it sold out in just 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Manager Guillaume says it wasn't even a small quantity. The product is top quality, and Gayong knows how to make viewers open their wallets. At this rate, they'll need to boost stock in the US quickly. Another man says everything's been wrapped up. Guillaume says he's heading over now. Roha calls Guillaume and apologizes for bothering him during a busy time. He says it's no problem and asks what she needs. She says she's not familiar with the New York channels. He apologizes for not explaining earlier. She says it's okay and asks about the sales. He tells her she'll see for herself on the broadcast. She thanks him for his hard work. 2 women are talking. One says she expected it. Gayung selling out on her first broadcast is amazing. The other says JL should be grateful for her. Gayung says it was thanks to everyone working together and tells them good job. She calls Junhan and reminds him she kept her promise and tells him to book her flight. One of the ladies asks Gayung where she's going, and Gayung says New York has become boring. Meanwhile, Roha thanks manager Jeom and wishes him good night. Jinmyoung tells Junhan that he's already helped him out before heading to work and asks how the honeymoon went. Junhan says it went well thanks to his help. Jinmyoung says he heard the new brand launched successfully in New York. Junhan replies that it's too early to say for sure, but things aren't bad so far. Jinmyoung says his wife must bring good fortune since everything has been going smoothly after the wedding. Roha says his kind words are more than enough and calls him chairman. He corrects her and tells her to call him grandfather instead. She agrees and calls him grandfather. He asks if she plans to keep working as a florist and running her company that grows and sells flowers. She says, of course, her income can't compare to Junhan's, but she's respected in her field and enjoys it. He says he might be old-fashioned, but he won't ask her to quit. She just needs to remember the kind of family she married into, and she says she'll keep that in mind. Jinmyoung asks one of the staff if that is ready and then says, well done, confirming it's Choi XXX's famous work. She says yes, it's a special VIP order. He tells Roha to take it with her when she leaves. It's a tonic that helps with preparing for pregnancy. He says business is important, but so is family. And having healthy future generations is just as critical as managing a company. Junhan asks if talking about pregnancy so soon after marriage isn't putting on too much pressure. Jinmyoung admits he might have gotten a little too excited thinking about welcoming a new family member and says there's no need to rush. They should take their time and prepare gradually. Then jokes that Junhan is looking at him like he wants to bite him. Roha thanks him for being considerate. Somewhere else, a man and a woman are talking. The man asks if today is the day the team leader returns. The woman says yes and says she's jealous and wonders when she'll ever get to go to America. The man says that reminds him. The new gardening team leader is also starting today. The woman says she heard it's a man. He says he saw someone in the CEO's office earlier who looked impressive. She says that must be him because she saw someone who didn't look like they belonged at a flower company and was wondering who it was. Roha walks in and asks if someone new joined the gardening team. The woman asks how her honeymoon was. Roha says it went well, thanks to them, and then asks if anything happened while she was gone. Then gives them cookies she brought from New York. The woman thanks her. The man says those are hard to get, and Roha asks what they were talking about earlier about someone joining the gardening team. The woman says the new gardening team leader starts today, and Roha says, really? The woman says there's a rumor, and the man says he knows which one, that the CEO's third son is a famous gardener from abroad. The woman confirms it and says she heard he came back to Korea and is joining the company. The man says he saw him and honestly thought he was a model. One of the gardeners comes in and asks where to put the red and yellow roses for today. Roha calls him Sokwon and apologizes, then tells him they'll arrange them now since she was planning to go to the front anyway to check on the flowers. She tells the rest of the staff to keep working hard. The woman tells Roha she's amazing for focusing on work right after her honeymoon. If it were her, she wouldn't be able to concentrate at all, and then says Roha isn't just anyone. She became the youngest team leader at Codasol based on her own abilities and even got recent contract offers from France and Italy. Meanwhile, another man and woman are talking. The woman asks if he handles a certain task, and the man says no wonder the CEO said she wanted her as a daughter-in-law. She asks if that's true, and he says that's why the CEO was disappointed the arranged marriage was with the JL family, and that for someone as strict as the CEO to say that, she must have really meant it. Back at the shop, Roha says she'll finish up and head upstairs, but Sokwon says he'll take care of it. Roha says he's worked hard while she was away, so he should go home early. He agrees and thanks her. Roha drops some flowers and says the tulip line is done, then thinks to herself that the areca palm pots are the only ones left. She slips and nearly falls, but a young man catches her and tells her to be careful because the floor is wet from watering the plants. She thanks him. Junhan asks why recruitment is on hold and what kind of approval document this is. Wasn't Park Ga-young already confirmed? Jeom apologizes and says Ga-young suddenly changed her mind. Junhan asks if she's asking for a higher salary. Jeom says no. She has a personal condition she wants to discuss before signing, and she wants to speak with Junhan directly. He adds there's another issue. Junhan tells him to go ahead. Jeom brings up designer Kwak Sunwoo, asking if Junhan knows him. Junhan says yes. Isn't he the one who keeps turning down their collaborations? And quite a famous name, too. Jeom agrees and says Park Ga-young seems to know Kwak Sunwoo. She warned that if the deal falls through, she might go to a competitor with him. That would mean losing both a top show host and a well-known designer to the competition, which would be a big loss. Junhan says he understands and will meet with Ga-young to decide whether to accept her condition. He asks Jeom to keep all of this confidential, and Jeom agrees. Meanwhile, in the garden, a man tells Roha the front flower display of Hwaseol is well maintained, and the flower selection based on sunlight is excellent. Roha replies that happiness grows from healthy flowers, that's Hwaseol's motto, and thanks him since it was her task. She asks if he's the new gardening team manager. He apologizes and says he didn't properly introduce himself. He asks if she's team leader Roha from the design team, and she asks how he knows that. He says it's nice to meet her. He's Yoo Jin-woo, gardening team leader at Hwaseol. He mentions he's heard a lot about her from his mother. Roha guesses he means the CEO. He says his mother praised how capable and upright she is. Roha says she appreciates that and looks forward to working with him. CEO Kang In-seok walks up and says it looks like they've already met. He tells Roha she has a meeting and asks Yoo Jin-woo to brief her on the weekly update. Since she missed it, he says she'll need to hear about the gardening projects. Yoo Jin-woo says not to worry, and she leaves it to him. He asks Roha if they should go to the greenhouse, and that he'll explain things as they look around. As they walk, he gives her instructions, and she says the greenhouse has more problems than expected. Yoo Jin-woo asks if Junhan is doing well and if he's still quiet. Roha asks if he knows Junhan. Yoo Jin-woo says they were classmates in high school, and though Junhan might not remember him, he remembers clearly. Back then, Junhan was already famous. Roha is surprised and asks if he was really that popular. Yoo Jin-woo says yes, for both good and bad reasons. Junhan transferred during their second year from the US. He had this mysterious, cold, and rebellious image, and barely spoke to anyone, but he was good-looking, so he got popular fast. That popularity brought strange rumors. Roha asks what kind of rumors. Yoo Jin-woo asks if she's curious about Junhan's high school days and tells her to stop by his office sometime and he'll tell her everything. There's an announcement at the airport for passengers arriving on KJ Airlines Flight 102 from New York with baggage claim at Carousel 6. Ga-young calls Junhan and says she's in New York. She asks if he passed her message to the division head and wants to know when they can meet. Junhan doesn't answer at first, so she checks if he's there. He quietly replies that yes, he's there. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.